Welcome to the MrpTech Podcast. This is episode 63. My name is Matt, and this is the weekly podcast discussing everyday tech for everyday people. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me again this week. Over the last few weeks, if you haven't been listening to the previous podcast, we've been doing a in-depth review of Skywave Linux for software radio enthusiasts. And I've covered a little bit about the pros and cons of this particular Linux distribution. And in the past week or so, I have done some experimenting with an SDR dongle. And I mentioned last week that I was able to get a lot of things up and running very easily using Skywave Linux. I really have a whole lot more to update you all when it is concerned with that. But what I do want to discuss with all of you today is this isn't something that I'm going to just move on from. Over the next few weeks and months, I'm going to be using this more and more, and I'll report back when I have some more info for all of you in regards to Skywave. But for today, what I want to do is I just want to talk about a few things that have caught my radar over the last several weeks and talk about some upcoming projects that I'm working on at home and my plans for the summer and what I'd like to do over the next few months. So the first thing that has sort of caught my eye off and on for the last, I'd say, several months is Ubuntu 17.10, and I seem to have caught the Ubuntu bug again. It happens every so often, and if you've listened to this show for a while, you already know that currently I'm running Arch Linux on most of my Linux test machines. And being someone who started with Ubuntu, when I found out that Canonical was moving from the Unity desktop back to the GNOME desktop, I was actually surprised and pleasantly surprised when I heard this. And this is coming from somebody who didn't really mind the Unity desktop, but hearing that the GNOME desktop is returning to the main Ubuntu release makes me consider again going back to Ubuntu once 17.10 is released, or maybe even 18.04, the next long-term support release. So now there's things that are sort of catching my eye that I just wanted to discuss on here with some of you in case you missed it. A few weeks ago, there was actually a poll that was put out by Canonical, and basically just polling users on the use of GNOME extensions. Basically, each extension on this poll was an optional vote, and I was happy to see that OMG Ubuntu, I believe, or it may have even been on the Ubuntu website itself, released the results of the poll so everybody could see. And basically the votes ranged from not very useful to very useful for certain things like dash to dock, or a better volume indicator, the usefulness of icons on the top menu, alt tab, applications menu, and similar items like that some people use, some people don't, as well as like the locations of the maximize, minimize buttons, whether you want them on the left side, the right side, and this seems to come up quite a bit. What I appreciated about this was the fact that it seems like they are really looking at the community, and they want the community's input to make this next release of Ubuntu pretty solid. And this is a big change, switching the default desktop, and I think they want to get it right, which is I'm sure always been their vision, but in this case, I think they're looking towards the community to help them sort of iron out the fine details, which is something that I can appreciate. And I know that GNOME is now the default desktop in the daily builds of Ubuntu, and I haven't had a chance to check them out yet. I would encourage anybody who's interested in looking at Ubuntu again with the GNOME desktop to take a look at those daily builds and see how they're coming. Right now, from the looks of it, it's pretty bare bones, but I'm sure that as time goes on, you're going to see more and more being put into this project. From what I've read over the last couple of days is basically that GDM is going to be the default login manager, and it's only going to have 2 sessions to offer. It's going to have GNOME and GNOME for Wayland. That's exciting to try out. I would be curious. I know when I tried Fedora a while back, Wayland seemed to be working pretty well. So I'm curious as to what kind of experience I will have when trying Wayland on Ubuntu. So I'm looking forward to some of those things and trying them out this summer, trying out some of the daily builds, seeing how things are changed from week to week or even day to day. And I believe this next release of Ubuntu is going to be called Artful Aardvark. They're back to the letter A again. It hasn't been officially announced, but you can see some information on the Ubuntu websites, development sites about that name. So Artful Aardvark is what we're looking at for Ubuntu 17.10. Another project that seems to be catching my eye more and more, and I'm not exactly sure why, is the KDE Neon project. Now, this is something that I've looked at before, but it seems like every time there is a new release or an update for KDE Neon, it just gets more and more beautiful as time goes on. And taking a look at the website, kde.org or neon.kde.org, even the website itself is now looking very slick and more professional as time goes on. We're seeing a lot of development here for the KDE desktop, and I've sort of been neglecting KDE for the last year or so, and I think it's time to take another look at it and see how far it's come. I tried to do my best to cover a wide range of topics here on this podcast, and for some reason I just I seem to always lean towards GNOME or other projects, and I think one of the things I'd like to do this summer is take a better look at KDE and what it has to offer. I used to be someone who would jump from distribution to distribution quite a bit, and I would always be trying new things. And since I've kind of put Linux in more of a production environment recently, within the last 6 to 8 months, I've started doing live streaming with my System 76 computer with various projects that I work on, and not for this podcast, but for other professional things. I've sort of stuck with the same distribution on that machine, and that tends to be my best Linux machine. Seems to have everything working well, and so trying new desktop environments, new projects like KDE, basically gives me a limited amount of room to work with when I need to use it in production. So that doesn't mean that I'm not going to try it, though. I see updates put out by the KDE community. I see blog posts and articles being written all the time about KDE Neon, and every time that I come across one as I'm browsing the web, I'm just blown away on how good it looks, the amount of effort and time and detail put into how beautiful it is, and I'm hearing lots of great things around the community, various different communities about it. So I'm really looking forward to trying KDE Neon as well this summer. And as I sit here talking to you, I'm wondering what your summer projects are. Do you have anything that you're working on? It doesn't have to be Linux related. It could be anything related. And I'd like you to share those with me. Any sort of geek related projects that you're looking forward to or you're excited about. Are you building something? Are you working on something, checking off something on your list that you've wanted to do or wanted to build for a long time? I would love to hear those stories, and I'd love to share them on air. It could be anything science related, computer related, technology related. And if you could do me a favor and tell me what your projects are, and I'd love to talk about them on the show and just bring them up to maybe get other people to hear what it is you're doing and provide them with some useful information. You can email me. It's mrptechreviews@gmail.com, and I would be happy to hear those stories. So what's your tech project that you're working on this summer? And I'll also share a few more of my ideas once I hear back from everybody. So send me those ideas of what you're working on this summer, and I would love to just talk about them for a few minutes on this show because, I've got a few projects I'm working on, but I would love to share what everybody else, what listeners are doing out there and sort of create a community here of I know there's a lot of people listening that really are enjoying this show, and I'd like to give you a few minutes of on-air time here to just sort of read out your stories, what it is you're doing, and just tell everyone about it. And I think that's what's kind of cool about being able to do this. So it doesn't always have to be all about me, and in fact, I don't like things to be all about me. So send those in. Now, speaking of summer projects, this summer is probably, for me, the busiest summer that I have ever had. And I've got weddings to go to this summer. I have family reunions to go to this summer. I've got graduation parties to go through this summer. And everybody, has a busy time once the weather's nice and everybody is sort of out and out of school, out and about this summer. On top of all those sort of family obligations, I also have in the summertime. So during the school year, I'm a school teacher. I work at a small school district, and we're about to break for the summer, obviously. And since I graduated from college, I have also had a summer job that I really enjoy working at. To give you sort of some background information, that I've talked about being a music teacher on and off in this podcast. Well, my classroom does not have any windows in it, and so basically from September to June, I don't get to see much sun. I don't get to see the outside very much, and I'm sort of an outdoor person. And during the summertime, what I do is I work at a major tourist attraction in my area. It's basically a 2-mile long canyon, and there's a river that runs through the canyon itself. And there are various activities that you can do at this major tourist attraction. There are 4+ miles of walking trails. Some go along the rim of the canyon. Some go down inside the canyon. There are rock climbing opportunities. There are rafting opportunities. There are night tours. There are guided tours. There are self-guided tours. The list goes on and on, what you can do at this place. And when I first started working there, I was hired as the kitchen manager to sort of take over things that were happening in the food side of that business. And I found, I had been working in food for several years, and I really it wasn't something that I really was interested doing, but I was sort of doing it as a favor. And as time went on, I realized that I really like this place, but I want to be outside. And so I moved from that to working on the trails and doing trail maintenance, being outside all day. Hard work, but very rewarding work. And as time went on, I had several other roles. I was a tour guide. I did a lot of helping when on certain days we would have, over 1,000 people showing up in a short amount of time. And so I would sort of be the guy that would help out when things were overwhelmed in certain areas. And so over the years, I've pretty much done almost every position at this particular place, and really just enjoy being outside and doing something different for a couple of months. It gives me a break, but also at the same time, I'm able to keep working and keep paying the bills and that type of thing. And so this summer, well, to give you an example, at the end of last summer, it was their busiest summer ever, and it got so busy that we were really strained and really stressed to provide the services that we do there, because there was so many people coming to this place. And I must have done an okay job. At the end of the summer, I was offered a supervisor position for this year to sort of take over one section of this 2 mile long canyon and sort of oversee what everything is going on. So on top of all of my busy schedule this summer, I'm also taking on a supervisor position at this major tourist attraction, which sort of will give me odd work hours. So sometimes I'll have to go in early, sometimes I'll have to stay late, and I'm not really sure exactly what to expect as of yet. So if you're listening to this podcast, what's going to happen with this is you may see a sort of what might seem as a random releases for this podcast. I'm going to try to do another podcast next week, and depending on my schedule, when I can, I will produce an episode and get it released. But if you don't see a release for a week or 2 weeks, don't panic. The podcast isn't going anywhere. You might just see a quick podcast put out by me if I have an opportunity to get on the microphone for a little bit, or if I do get some extra time, I will record a longer episode. Usually I shoot for anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes if I can. And basically, so the summer is going to be quite unpredictable. So just to give you a heads up about that, this show isn't going anywhere. When I return in September, I'm going to be recording weekly once again. I really enjoy doing this podcast, and if I don't do a weekly podcast in the summer, it might be every other week. There might be I put out 2 weeks in a row and then take a couple weeks off, something like that. I'm not really sure what to expect. So just to give you guys a heads up about that, I will be taking somewhat of a step away, but I'm going to try to remain active as I can for just a couple of weeks. And so don't panic. We're not going anywhere. And in fact, I think what it will end up doing is it'll end up giving me a chance to complete some projects that I've been wanting to work on, and then give me more to talk about when time comes back. So definitely just watch the RSS feeds for the next releases, and if you don't see me for a little bit, don't worry too much about it. And I'm sure I know a lot of other podcasts out there take the whole summer off. That's not really what I want to do. I want to, keep producing. Like I said, I really enjoy doing this. So even though I'm taking a sidestep here just a little bit, once September rolls around again, I will be definitely doing weekly podcasts again. And, thanks for your patience on that as I sort of switch gears into my summer job, which I really also enjoy doing and also enjoy being outside. So that's kind of the news here for the MrpTech Podcast. And once again, if you have summer projects that you're working on, I'd love to hear from you about that. And also, if you've been listening to any back episodes and you have comments on back episodes, I did get a couple more emails on the climate change episode I did a while back, and I'm still working on that. I have been given a couple more videos to watch, and when I get some time, I will do that. So thanks for sending that in, those of you who did that. It's been really fun for the last few weeks, sort of working on a project and giving some feedback to an actual Linux project and helping those things out. And that's sort of what I want to do. I want to be able to help people in any way that I can. And the more and more that I do this, the more and more I realize that moving to the Podnuts network was absolutely the right choice for me. I sort of just do this for the fun of it. I really enjoy podcasting, and everyone else on the Podnuts network is exactly the same way. They enjoy producing these shows, and they really want to help each other out in any way that they possibly can. And if I have the opportunity to be able to help someone out as a podcast host, that to me is more rewarding than anything that I can do just by sort of spurting out information week after week. And so if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out, and don't be scared about reaching out to a podcast host. I'm always willing to help out people if I can, and if I can't, I try to do different things. There was one person on the YouTube channel that was having trouble with some of their hardware, and I reached out to the developer to try to help them out. As far as the Linux distribution that they were using. And, I try to do things when I can to help those out. If I don't get to you in a couple of days, I always try to remember to get back. So if you send a message and I haven't responded, don't, hopefully you're not too offended. It seems like I have a good group of people listening to the show, and I'm always willing to help you out in any way that I can. And the only thing that I ask is tell people about this show. If you know people who listen to podcasts and have an interest in tech, by all means, tell them about this show, tell them about the other shows on the Podnuts network. And if you get real motivated, go over to podnuts.com and make that $1 monthly subscription, and really help them out and help Podnuts keep going. Because this podcast has improved greatly since joining the Podnuts network, and part of that has to do with a growing audience, and a big part of it has to do with the type of people that I get to ask the questions and get help from when I need it. So big thank you to anybody who's helped me with this show over the last few months. I've got a lot of great ideas coming up. And if you have an idea for a show topic, please send it to me. I would be glad to discuss this with you either off air or on air, or either way. I always enjoy hearing from my listeners. So thank you guys so much for listening. That's going to do it for this week. We'll have one more episode next week, and then we'll start the crazy summer schedule. So thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around, and have a great week, and we'll see you next time.